On behalf of Barnard College and Women in Hollywood, it is my honor to welcome you to the 11th Annual Athena Film Festival. This festival is dedicated to celebrating the stories of bold, courageous women leaders and the filmmakers who bring these stories to life. Thank you for joining us. My name is Melissa Silverstein, and I'm the artistic director and co-founder of the festival. I am so proud that we have been able to put together a robust festival that reacts and responds to the world we are all living in now. This year's festival would not be possible without the support of our dedicated sponsors. Please join me in thanking Athena's founding sponsor, the Artemis Rising Foundation, and its CEO and founder, Regina K. Scully. Her visionary and leadership makes our work possible. A special thank you as well to our premium level sponsor, the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, which shares our commitment to showcasing stories of women in science. To all of our sponsors, whose names you will see before each film and event, thank you for your commitment to challenging our culture to be more inclusive and inspiring audiences in the process. You are in for a treat today. A masterclass with a true master, Gloria Calderón Kellett. She will be in conversation with Roseanne Welch, who wrote on the OG, Beverly Hills 90210, Picket Fences, and other shows. She is also the executive director of Stevens College MFA in TV and screenwriting. Stevens is a true friend to Athena and a partner on our annual TV Writers Lab. If you don't know who Gloria is, you clearly have not been watching television over the last couple of years. So start watching. She is a showrunner, writer, director, and actor best known for the critically acclaimed reboot One Day at a Time. She is currently has a big deal at Amazon, and we're going to hear some of her great shows that she's doing in the future. I'm super excited to hear where you're going, and she's just developing shows and movies and is such an important voice in the industry. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
This is so wonderful. Welcome, Gloria. Thank you. It's so lovely to have a chance to talk to you about your craft, because that's what we're excited about at Stevens College, and getting more women and underrepresented voices into the medium. And you are a founder of that for us. Our audience and students love your work. So I'm going to start with the question they always ask, which is, can you give us your superhero origin story? With a particular focus on when you knew you were a storyteller and how you became in this place today.
Oh my goodness. I have so many versions of this story that could go hours and hours. So I'll try to give you the most brief version. So basically, I am the daughter of Cuban immigrants. My parents came when they were 15 years old with a suitcase and a dream, and not knowing any English. They learned English by watching TV, funnily enough. Because of the way that they came here, Miami's not what it is now. So 14,000 Cuban kids, refugees came, and different churches and organizations volunteered to take them in, the kindness of strangers at work. So my parents both ended up in Portland, Oregon. The Cuban diaspora is very spread out over this country, mostly in Miami and New Jersey, but we're everywhere. Latinos are everywhere, guys. So I grew up in Portland, Oregon. And it was lovely. It was lovely. I had a really lovely, idyllic childhood. I grew up in a Cuban community, but then there was the broader community at hand. It was very beautiful and green. It's much cooler now than it was when I lived there. Now it's all coffee shops and microbrews, and that was not the case. It was just very green and pretty. And then I moved to San Diego, California, a week before my freshman year of high school. So I did 4 years in San Diego, and then I came to Los Angeles for college. I went to Loyola Marymount University here in LA. When I graduated, I thought I was going to be an actor. And right before I graduated, there was a playwrights festival at school. And I kind of had an inkling that you should write something. Write something. Why not write something? Never written anything before. I mean, I could write papers quickly, but that was it. I had never written a play before. So I kind of puked out this play that I was just thinking about, and it ended up winning the festival. And I was like, oh, is this a thing? Is this a thing maybe? And then I sort of put it to the side, and thought like, well, I'm already graduating from college. I wasted my life. I can't now decide I'm a writer at 22. Aren't we just incredible creatures? So I graduated and I started to try the auditioning process in Los Angeles, and all of the parts were drug dealers' girlfriends or drug dealers' sisters.
Oh, the
Maybe
variety
a
was good.
prostitute. That was exciting. And I'd always have to go in and I couldn't speak the way I speak. I'd have to be like, oh, yeah, Julie, what are you doing? Like, it would be ridiculous. I did not book those roles. But I really became really frustrated by obviously what was out there for my community. So I thought, I should do that writing thing. Maybe I should do more of that writing thing. So I decided to apply to grad school. So I got into the University of London, Goldsmiths College. I went to London. While I was there, I worked at the Royal Court Theatre, which is the premier new works theatre in London. Incredible experience. And I wrote like 7 plays when I was out there. And I won the International Student Play Script Competition that Alan Ayckbourn funds, and a Waterstone Prize, and a bunch of stuff that made me feel like, okay, I'm getting outdoor validation. This might be a thing. And then when I came back from England and came to LA, like, nobody cares you have a master's degree. So that time was useful, though. That was an expansive experience going to grad school. So I loved that I did it. But when I came back, I really realized, like, okay, I have to really focus on the craft of writing. I have to figure out the craft of writing. So I'm fairly self-taught. I just got a bunch of books from the library. I'm a big library person, read a ton of plays, and I would go to the Museum of TV and Radio, now the Paley Center, and I would teach myself. I would sit there and break down scripts and really realized I had to put in the time. I had to put in the time of learning what this craft was. And so that's what I did. I spent, a year. I was fortunate in that I just put myself out there and said, I will take any industry job. I just need an industry job. I don't care what it is. I'll PA, I'll get caught, whatever. And my first industry job was working as second assistant for Cameron Crowe, which was amazing. And guys, you cannot know. Here's the thing. You cannot know anyone. And if you're putting in the time and the work, it just happens. I mean, really, you just have to put in the time and the work. Mm-hmm. So when I worked for Cameron, it was wonderful because I had a front row seat to how he worked. And I also just got to write all day because he just gave me a list of things to do. And as long as I got that list done, he was good. He just needed a second, he had a first assistant to do the major things. So I would just write and write and write and get my list done for Cameron and go to the Paley Center. And I started putting up plays. I realized, like, what is my superpower? What I learned in England was I can put up a play in a black box theater. Easy. So I found the Hudson Avenue Theater, which still exists on Santa Monica Boulevard here in LA. And I asked them, what nights are you dark? And they said, well, we run usually Thursday through Sunday. So we're dark Monday through Wednesday. And I said, how much would it be to book a stage that has a set on it? And they're like, $200. I'm like, great. So I found out Backstage West and LA Weekly will review your show if it's a 6-week run. They may review your show if there's a 6-week run. So I booked 6 Tuesdays and I cast a show. I directed the show. I put the show up and I gave free tickets to the cast for opening night only. And I gave free tickets to all my favorite charities. And so the first 2 Tuesdays we were sold out except for critics who could come whenever they wanted. We'd make a chair for the critics. And then we had a line around the block the rest of the run. And that is how I got my agent and my manager. They came. An assistant told a friend who told an agent who told and at the end of that run, I had representation. So it was really like a matter of putting in the time, putting in the hustle, then putting the work out there in a really aggressive way. And then I started working my way up the ladder. I was a writer's assistant, and then I became a staff writer, and then a story editor, executive story editor, a co-producer, a supervising producer, right? Like I did all the things.
Every line.
And then, 12 years after being a journeyman writer on other people's shows, I got my shot to be a showrunner, and that was one day at a time.
That's a gorgeous, true story that we try to tell people all the time. It is about putting in the work. And of course, it's the quality of the work that shows.
Yes. And I think that I worry a lot I talk a lot to students who are like just graduating. They're like, Gloria, I have a pilot. You should co-show run with me. I'm like, you guys, Maybe you're the one. Maybe you're the one that can pull that off. Most of the time that's not going to go so well. Like, I think the reason I was successful is because I learned from so many wonderful showrunners that I saw come before me, so that by the time I had my seat in the chair, I knew how to do it.
You knew the job. Exactly.
Right.
You put in the time.
Yeah.
That's so wonderful. So what was that first play about?
The first play is about two people. It's called Plane Strangers, and it's about two people that meet on a plane and have a remarkable conversation.
That's all that's necessary.
Yep.
That's one night in Miami.
Two chairs. That's what it was.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So my favorite question for writers is always, now that you look back at the body of work you've created so far, and as you're planning the future body of work that you're putting together, what theme or themes do you see running through? What are the messages you have to put out there with your work?
Hope, joy. I really feel like part of my purpose here is to speak to a community that has been wildly underrepresented. So for me, it is not only sad, but really damaging to see the Latino experience, the American Latino experience, reduced to just gangbangers and drug dealers. Every once in a while we'll get an Ugly Betty. Every once in a while we're going to get a Jane the Virgin. Every once in a while we'll get a George Lopez show. That's 3 shows. So it's just not enough. And it's certainly not enough to affect real change in terms of how people see us. So for me, joy and happiness and thriving are revolutionary things. And showing my community doing all of those things, one day at a time, we talked about very serious issues, but we did so with love and joy and earnestness. And so for me, I'm earnest. I'm not cool. I'm earnest. I'll talk about real stuff. I want to make you laugh a little bit, and I want to make you feel some feelings. And then you turn the TV off and you feel pretty good. That's what I would like to do in my time when people are gifting me their time to spend time with my characters. I want to make them feel better.
I completely agree. That's why we invited you today, because that's a message we agree with putting out in the world, both for all the underrepresented groups that come forward, and also, of course, for women in the world who haven't necessarily seen themselves portrayed in all the many facets that can be. And that's one of the things I loved about One Day at a Time. As a child, I loved the show because I was the daughter of the first Catholic divorced woman in her family. My relatives are from Sicily, immigrants. And it was shocking that she was divorced and she was on television. And that was what my mother was. So to see that representation, the family was okay, was amazing. So now you've taken that and given us a veteran, a female veteran, right, who has this experience at war that we don't see women live through. So how did that come about? How did that idea come to you?
Well, it really is, the collaboration of myself, Mike Royce, and Norman Lear. Mike's daughter was coming out at the time that we were doing the pilot. We have permission to discuss that. So we did get permission from her to discuss. And Norman was a veteran. So Norman came in and said, how about the ex-husband is a veteran? Why don't we make the ex-husband a veteran? And we were like, oh, that's really good. That's really interesting. And as we were talking to veterans, we realized a lot of veterans meet one another in service, and a lot of veterans marry veterans. Yes. And so then it was like, well, wait a minute. Why are we giving this super interesting thing to a person we're not going to be spending time with, this off-screen character? Why don't we also have Penelope be a veteran? And then they both met in service, and it just seemed like a really cool thing to investigate. And so we had consultants. Musa, that was our military consultants. And we had a lot of female veterans come in and male veterans come in and talk about what it was like and being married to somebody in service and the different experiences that the men and the women have and how it really affects marriages in a big way and how 9/11 affected them. Like all of it, really all of that texture really came at the service of speaking to actual veterans and trying to honor their experience.
But it also came from you asking that very important question, why waste that on a side character when we could put it onto the female character, which again, wasn't the first idea that came to people.
Right.
That really speaks to the representation you brought into that room.
Oh, well, thank you.
Well, it does. And also, I have to ask you, because the original show did not have a grandmother. So at what point did you decide, of course, a grandmother, right? And then
Well, for me, that was my first meeting with Norman. He sat down and he said, "What would it look like if you were divorced?" And I said, "Oh, if I got divorced, my parents would live with me. They'd move in. I mean, right now they live across the street. Okay, like we're real Latino. We're Everybody Loves Raymond right now. My parents literally live across the street. So it's just, that's what we do. It's very cultural that we will eventually take in our parents. We just do that. And so if I didn't have a husband anymore, my mom would live with me. That's just what would happen. And so then Norman asked about my mom. Tell me about your mom. And I've been describing my mother this way my whole life. I said, picture Rita Moreno and with a heel and some lipstick. And that's my mom. And I have been saying that literally my whole life. And Norman was like, "Oh, I'm friends with Rita. We should get Rita." And I was like, "Okay, Norman. Okay. Yeah, we'll get Rita Moreno. Okay." And then he called Rita Moreno and she said yes.
Oh, that is such a beautiful story, because what a beautiful thing for her to be doing at this stage in her career. What a beautiful contribution for her to be able to make.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And you made that happen.
It's crazy.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. All right. I've got to go to this point because we're talking about representation in the room. So there's a piece on Align, because of course we looked up lots of cool stuff, where you made the choice for your sophomore job, because that is a big jump for writers. First job, maybe that's, wow, you got it. And then sometimes things peter out.
Mm-hmm.
But you had this choice to go from How I Met Your Mother and stay at a lower title, or to move into the George Lopez show, which would allow you a higher title and more money. But you made a career choice that you needed not to be pigeonholed, right? And I'm summarizing what you say in this piece, because my question about it is, so you landed in How I Met Your Mother. And was there a time when you were happy, not just you knew that was good for your career, but you had a chance to be in a room that needed your voice? There was something you were able to say in the show that might not have been said or not have said that could have been said.
I think, every show I went on was such a great experience for so many reasons. I think that at that moment in time, I was also an age, I didn't have kids yet. So I also felt like I didn't have a lot to speak to in terms of a family comedy experience. I was more my friends were dating and we were all everyone was falling in love. And so it also felt like that felt truer to my experience in my late 20s. I was like 28, I think, when I got on How I Met Your Mother. And it was a young room. The guys, it was their first time being showrunners, and we were all friends and would all hang out. And I think that I think every writer that passed through there left some really nice fingerprints of stories about their dating, stories about love. They left those fingerprints on that show for sure.
Which is probably why it too was so successful, because
and they had a lot of women. They were really great. Carter and Craig were great. They hired a lot of women too.
Oh, great! So their room was inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yay! Well, that leads us to talk about your rooms and how you compose a room.
Well, it's always every show has specific needs. And I think that every showrunner thinks about what those specific needs are. And because I like to tell stories about disenfranchised, underserved voices, I am not always that either, right? So like a new show I'm working on right now has a trans character. So it was very important to me that I have trans voices in the room that can speak to that experience so that I'm getting it right and I'm honoring. What I'm trying to do by writing the character is honor this community. So if I don't do the work of having the person behind the scenes to give me an accurate, thoughtful POV, then I'm not fully completing the circle of that, So, Afro-Latino rep. So making sure I have Afro-Latino writers in the room. I am a white Latina. I walk the world as in many times I walk the world as a white woman. I pass, right? So I can't possibly understand or speak to the experience of what it is to walk the world as an Afro-Latina woman. And Afro-Latino representation is non-existent. Gina Torres, right? Like we thank God she's a goddess, so thank God we get her. But I'm sorry. There's Rosario. There's Tessa. There's we have superheroes.
But there's still a small.
There's
family.
Zoe, but I'm talking more like TV. Right. They're movie stars. yeah, we just need to do better. We just need to do better. So yeah, so those experiences I think are really vital. Doing a big gay storyline, two gay men falling in love, and what, you know, a really sweet story about two gay men falling in love. So I got to have some gay men to speak to, you know, so it's that. And so for One Day at a Time, we were doing a specifically Cuban American experience, but I wanted to also tap into the universalities of the Latino experience. So what was really fun was being in the room and saying, hey, who of the Latinos in the room whose parents let them go to sleepovers? Yep, none of us. Okay,
None.
so that's universal, right? Like it would be fun to see what the chancla. Anyone else have a grandma that would take their slipper? Oh, all of us. Okay, cool. You know, like that kind of stuff. So it was, and that was really great. And that was really great too, in terms of there was a storyline once where Mike was like, okay, and then Elena goes to her friend's house and spends the night, and I was like, nope.
That's not gonna happen.
Nope, that's not gonna work. Gloria, that's just your family. And then I could go, guys, oh no, it's universe, you know, even on my own show, you know. And so Mike was like, oh dang, okay. And that was, you know, that's also the danger of like only one, right? When you have only one, then they're like, well, that's probably just your experience, but that's not universal. So that's why it's good to have more than one if you can. Look, writers' rooms are small. You can't possibly have every character that you put on screen in the room. I understand that. But I think for your main characters, you should try to do the due diligence of having a consultant at the very least, just to make sure if in fact you are delving into that, right? Like I understand on a procedural that might not be as important. But for more, you know, dramas and comedies that are relying on the experience of the person, you know, let's give a little love behind the scenes as well as in front of the camera.
Exactly. And by the way, my Sicilian grandfather, no sleepovers. No. I bought a house. You live in house. This is good.
Yes.
House is good for you. No other house. Nobody will think you're poor if you have to live somewhere else. So,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty immigrant experience, I think.
Yes.
Pretty, you know, exactly. First gen. That's interesting. Wonderful. Okay. Well, one of the things that Athena is very interested in, of course, is leadership and female leadership, representing that. So just wonder, you know, how you thought about that in terms of, certainly Penelope represented that because being in the military has leadership qualities. How else are you seeing that come through your work and maybe in your future ideas?
You know, I really think in Hollywood, it's interesting to me that it's taken this long for women to sort of take the reins, because in our households, we have the reins. And really, I feel like a set is ultimate. Like I'm big mom energy on our sets, you know, like it's big mom energy. It's like you're organizing people. You're like, you go there, you do that. No, hey, we don't talk to people like that. I mean, it's really, you're everybody's mom. That's what it is. So I think it's great. I treat it very similarly to how I treat being a parent, is that like, let's all listen to each other and have respect, and let's all, you know, be kind, and let's do our work and do our very best. And then we can all have a really good time.
Perfect. And I take it that's how you make sure your writer's room is a secure place, a safe place for people to open up about their real stories.
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I are, but Norman Lear has a saying that he thinks there are wet people and dry people, and and that Mike and I are wet people. Like we just cry. We're just emotional mush humans. So day one of the writer's room, Mike and I had already spent like so much time together, crying and telling stories and stuff. So we're like, listen, this is a safe space. There's a Kleenex box on the table. You know, we want you to feel comfortable sharing your experiences if you're comfortable. And we also want this to be a safe space so that, you know, if people say something, like I remember often I would be like, okay, lesbians, I have a question. I might be wording it incorrectly. Please correct me if I'm saying something that's not right. And they'd be like, here we are for you, Gloria. Oh no, that was good. But then maybe you'd want to say this. Okay. Oh my God. Thank you. So we're all operating under the assumption that like we're coming with kindness and we're trying to bring about mutual understanding. So how can we do that in a respectful way? And so far it seems to have worked. People seem pretty happy.
Yeah, I love coming with kindness. That's a beautiful phrase for people to take away.
Oh, good.
Did that come from relatives, friends, life experience?
I'm just trying to have a good time on this planet. That's it, man. That's it. Just trying to have a good time. I think we could all have a way better time if we were just a little bit nicer and more respectful. Really. I just want to try to have fun on this earth. I mean, that for me is the revolution. The revolution is when brown people and women can just have a good time and not feel like we're going to be killed or raped. That's it. That's all I want.
Such a small thing.
It's not, you'd think, but it is revolutionary.
It is revolutionary. It's true. It's true. Interesting. All right. So let me ask you this. I'm hoping there's an answer to it. Is there a time when you've seen one of the stories you've been able to tell on television have a real effect in the real world? Whether it's a fan letter or through an experience.
Oh yeah. One day, that was the gift. That was the beautiful side effect of One Day at a Time. Yeah, our coming out story with Elena we would do panels and there would be a line after of mothers and daughters, mothers and grandmothers, granddaughters and grandmothers, nieces and their aunts, just saying like, I watched the show with my family and I came out to them and they felt less afraid for me as a result. They felt like it's going to be okay. And moms that would hug me and cry. And like, it was unbelievable. And the same would be true with the PTSD. We did a whole episode about medication and therapy, which is still a very taboo subject in a lot of communities of color, not just the Latino community. And we had so many people say, I was able to do therapy. I was able to explain to my parents medication. So that was huge. When Schneider relapsed, we had a lot of people reach out about showing, this character that for a long time was just sort of this fun side character and giving him this depth and understanding where his seemingly cheery attitude comes from and how it's often a mask for sadness and feeling alone in this world. Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of it was really oh my gosh, the disabled community when we had Santina, the trans community when we had Cynthia, Ramona was a proud Afro-Latina lesbian veteran. Alex's girlfriend was a beautiful Afro-Latina wealthy girl, so many. It was just gift upon gift whenever we would have people on the show. And, Santina, I remember a scene where the veteran group was at a bar after therapy and the ladies needed to leave the bar. And so Santina was in her wheelchair and she was like, oh, I can't get out of the bar because it was these stairs for the door. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I was like, hey, Bernie, can you guys do a ramp? Can we build a ramp? And so they built a ramp over lunch. They built a ramp and we came back to the set and there was a ramp there. And Santina started crying. She was like, Gloria, you don't understand. We don't see ramps. We don't see a person in a wheelchair leave a building with a ramp. Like we don't see that. And I was like, it's tiny things. These are not big things. And it meant so much to people. We had a scene in the pilot where Penelope's eating leftovers, and in rehearsal they had a Tupperware, and I had to go to props and say like, yeah, we don't do Tupperware. Immigrants were the first green people because we were poor. So I needed to take like an old country crock container and I need you to like make it seem like it's been through the dishwasher 100 times. That's what I want you to get. And so that's what we got, right? The amount of people that will just send me emails and tweets about like, I saw that butter tin. I saw that butter container with the food in it. And I was like, oh my God, how have I never seen this on TV? So that stuff is so meaningful. My God. It
tells people's real stories.
Yeah.
And they don't see that very often.
They just want to be seen. People just want to be seen.
It all boils down to that. And yet it seems so hard to move that forward.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of my questions. What else can we do as an industry? What else can people entering the industry do to help move these ideas forward and bring these stories forward?
I think write them. I think they just need to write and pitch them. I think it works when you do it. I think that the fan love is so real, and I think it's important. I think that now we are in a different time where social media is as impactful as ratings. There's a Nielsen's now for social media that helps to track the demo of your show, because it's a younger demographic that's on TikTok and Twitch and and all of the various platforms. I think we just need to write it and be open to trying something that's a little bit more interesting. I mean, for me, I loved watching Rami because I loved watching just a Muslim experience. But then why not have a best friend who's like a paraplegic in a wheelchair who's super funny? Like, that was an extra thing that they did. How great. And you don't think, it doesn't have to be the kooky best friend. I mean, he still got to be a kooky best friend, actually.
Yeah, no, he did, exactly. And then there are many people, obviously, who have whatever the differently abled issues are, who are just, they're people. Hello, how hard is that?
Yeah.
And we forget to show that on television.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's so wonderful. So when you were a child, what shows influenced you?
Oh, I loved sitcoms. I loved and I loved Fame. I was really into Fame. Loved it. My favorite. Love Boat, loved Fancy Island, but like Facts of Life, a Norman Lear show. Who's the Boss, a Norman Lear show.
Which flipped did some gender flipping way back in the day.
Yeah.
How interesting. Do you think you recognized those innovations back then? I mean, at what point did you look back at what you watched in television and realize that it had helped you? It was your university before you even thought about it.
Oh, I also really loved soap operas. So I would come home and watch a soap while I was doing my homework. And I realized later, I watched Santa Barbara and I watched General Hospital and Young and the Restless and Days of Our Lives. Like I really had a pretty good knowledge of many soap operas. And I realized that Pam Fryman was the director on Santa Barbara. And I was like, oh, Pam, that makes so much sense. You've been educating me since I was 12. And Norman, you've been educating me since I was 12. I mean, 12 is like roughly when I remember really being like, oh, this is a thing. This is a magical medium that can make people feel things. And that's really powerful.
Oh yeah. I often tell students the story in Justice Sotomayor's autobiography. She mentions that when she saw Perry Mason, she learned about the job of being a lawyer, and that convinced her that she should try for it. You're like, Perry Mason, well, it was a very staid, sort of slow show, but it had that effect.
Yeah. Well, I'm good friends with Christine who wrote Doc McStuffins. And she said the amount of young Black girls now who are going into STEM programs because they want to be a doctor because they saw a cartoon where a little Black girl was a doctor. Like, amazing. You need to see it to be it sometimes,
Exactly. All right. So here's a tough question for writers, but it helps up and coming writers all the time to hear this. Clearly, you're going to pitch a lot of things and they're not always going to fall. So how do you deal with being said no to? How do you deal with rejection?
There's so much rejection. Whatever. It's part of it. You have to get real good at just being a duck and letting it fly right off your back. I always focus on my why. Why am I doing this? And my why is pretty serious. My why is 2 immigrant kids at 15 years old not speaking the language saying, can we make it in this country? Fighting tooth and nail to educate me. My grandparents making very difficult decisions to send their children here. The great sacrifice that they all made, and my deep duty to speak to this beautiful community that I have to celebrate, and to leave a legacy, not only for my children, but for other children out there, so that they can see themselves and know that they deserve love and kindness and goodness in their life. I mean, that is it. That's it. I just sit with that. And then you go, all right, let's get back to it. There's not a lot of time for wallowing. You can be, I mourn, I'll give myself a day to mourn something if it passes, but then you got to just get on with it.
I agree. And it's tough. It's tough for people.
It's tough. Listen, One Day at a Time was my dream come true. It was my dream come true. It was my dream job. I loved it. I would have done it for 20 years. Honestly, I loved the people were like my family, Justina, Rita, we're all on an we're all on a text chain. We text each other constantly. Rita's like, you have to watch this documentary. I'm like, okay, Rita. I mean, we're all just a fan. We love each other, and we love
your grandmother. She became your grandmother.
And we loved working together. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart to have to fight so hard for that beautiful little show. It broke my heart that we weren't getting the ad dollars to promote it properly. Every step of the way, it was a fight, but I loved it. So, you love and you go, okay. When it was over, it was like, okay, this is over. Sad. Now let's get back to it. I don't have time to waste, man. I'm only here for so long. Let's get on with it.
Well, the beauty is it exists forever, right? In some iteration and reruns, it's always going to be there for another generation.
Every day on Twitter, somebody new sees it and sends me something. So it's very nice.
Exactly. That is the legacy.
Yeah.
That writers are given in this world. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. I love that. All right. I'm very interested in, I'm sure it was through the news and just knowing about this, but the episode that stuck to me the most was the episode about the young friend whose parents had been deported.
Mm.
How did you get that story through? And, what have you heard about it since?
Well, that one was Norman's idea. So Norman came in and said, let's do an episode where Rita's character, where Lydia is at the grocery store and gets deported, because that's a thing that's happening, is that people are going to domestic workers are going to grocery stores and getting caught by ICE and being deported. And so I had to say, well, Norman, different Latinos have different rules in this country. Cubans can't be deported. Or at least they couldn't at the time. I don't know if I don't know under 45's administration but
that's over. So
what happened? But at the time, Cubans can't be deported. We have different rules. And he was like, what do you mean you have different rules? I'm like, oh yeah, different people have different rules. Different people have different standings in this country. It's interesting that, there's this bizarre story out there that, Latinos aren't even the number one undocumented people that come here.
Yeah.
And yet because they're brown and from the South, it's like, oh, they're scary people. So I was like, but we can have a character that happens to. But if we're going to do that, we should set her up, because I don't want to do one very special episode. I want to set it up so that we get to know her in a different context. And then this is a surprise. So that's what Mike and I did. We set up Carmen early on as this funny goth Latina. And then we got to know her and we got to like her. And then as a result, we got to do this storyline. That was a really hard episode. It was a hard episode because any episode where you're trying to talk about an issue, you don't want to be didactic. You're trying to do it in a way that appeals to people's humanity and try to come at it from like a really real place, even though you're dramatizing it. So it was a tricky one to crack, and it was also a tricky one to make funny. Because it's a very serious issue, as were many of the issues that we did on the show. So it was a tricky one to crack, but I feel like we got there, and we're really proud of the episode.
It was beautiful, and it was exactly what you described. So important for students to listen to. You knew you couldn't do the very special episode. How boring and stupid that would be more exploitive than anything.
Right.
Yeah. And I remember watching it and thinking, oh, but I love that character. Now I'm going to lose her. I'm very upset about that.
Listen, the great pain was we loved Ariel Barrera so much that it was like, can we have Carmen? Can we just bring Carmen back? And then she booked a job. So we actually wrote a bunch of episodes with Carmen on FaceTime or on Zoom, and she became a superhero for Marvel. So what are you going to do? And now she's on the Rebel show, the new Erin Brockovich show. She's killing it. So she's fine.
And you guys gave her the platform to show off her talents. Your show gave her that opportunity.
Remarkable young woman.
That's a beautiful thought. So that reminds me, how involved did you get in casting? Obviously,
very.
Main
oh my God. No, casting is my everything. Because it's a collaboration. I have such deep respect for actors that put themselves on the screen. It's so hard. Oh my God. When I was acting, I remember one day where I went to an audition back when I was doing both. Okay. So I went to an audition that was running an hour and a half behind. It's a room full of people that are cuter and less cute versions of you. Okay. So it's like a room of you in various forms. I finally went in there. It's 9 pages of dialogue you have to memorize. I finally get in there, an hour and a half I waited. I finally get in there and they're like, we're just doing the third scene, which is 1 page. I did the one scene and they were like, they were literally on their phones. They were just like, I was like, what? And I left feeling so like, what am I doing? And that afternoon, I had a writer's meeting. And so that afternoon, I changed my clothes in my car as the typical actor that changed my clothes in my car, go into this writer's meeting. And I get there. I'm like, hi, I'm here to meet, I don't remember, Jeff Golden, or I don't remember, somebody at Fox. And they were like, oh, yes, Miss Calderón Kellett, of course. Can we get you coffee or a Diet Coke? Or I was like, I would love a Diet Coke. Get me a cold Diet Coke. I'm sitting, it's just me. It's just me waiting with my cold Diet Coke. And I'm like, oh, this is better. Then I go in, I sit with him for 45 minutes where he's so interested to hear about me. And then I'm like, what am I doing? This is better. So actors have to do that, have to memorize pages of dialogue every day, then go up on the screen and then put the heart and soul into your work. So it's a deep collaborative process. I need to feel a connection to the actor. That's really the truth. It's a really personal experience to me because I really also get in there. I really get in there. So, that's what when Justina came in, and it was like, I had been losing parts of Justina for years. Years. I literally would go in and be like, did Justina Machado, I'm just going to go home then. Because she's just a better actor than me. I can say it. That's okay. I think she's literally probably the best actress of my generation. So to go up again, it's like Meryl Streep. It's like, oh, well, Justina should get it. She's the best. If she's available, you should not hire me. You should hire her. So I'd been losing parts of her for years. So when I saw that she was available, because I thought she was on Queen of the South, and I really wanted her to come in because we're similar too. We're similar vibe. She came in and it was just like, oh my God, she's just remarkable.
She is.
And I just felt it. And then, and now she's like my sister. We talk all the, we're very, very, very close. Me and everybody, Isabella, Marcel, like we really got in there and we knew the specialness of us getting to all be together to do this thing. And it was a very personal journey, and everybody was kind and sweet. And yeah, I call about actors. I say, are they difficult? Are they, I don't play with that because it's a really personal thing.
Exactly. So that makes me think what people really need to know are what are the other jobs of show running that you had to learn that weren't inherent? Obviously the writing is the writing, the casting, you had acting experience. Was there a thing that you had to train yourself?
Well, I was really fortunate that I worked on shows where some of the showrunners like to do everything themselves. I think that they may not be aware that there's a real opportunity for learning. I don't think that I think I didn't know that I could ask. But Carter and Craig in particular, the How I Met Your Mother showrunners, were very generous in letting us be in on stuff. So like I would be in on casting. So I ran many casting sessions. I was a producer in the room many times. They would let me be in editing with Sue Fetterman. I would sit in with Sue and see like, figure out what editing was. So they would let us sit in on production meetings. So all that was Rob Thomas also let me sit in on editing, which I was really grateful for. So it's like all of those people that let you sit in on those things make it so that when you're in the seat, you just know how to do it. So I knew how to do the casting. I knew how to sit in editing. I was fortunate enough to do the showrunner training program that the Writers Guild puts together. So John Wells came in and gave an incredible breakdown of budgets and how to deal with budgets. Also how to sit down with your department heads and be very clear. So, and because I had been doing the theater, actually, I had such a clear idea. So I have a very specific vision, and then it's about communicating that vision to your department head so that they can effectively do their job. And, again, women are very communicative, tend to be more communicative. And I feel like the times where showrunners did a great job is when they were very communicative with their department heads. I mean, you're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar company when you're a showrunner. That's what it is. They're giving you $30 million and go make a show. And you have to effectively communicate with everybody and try to find a way to do it for that budget.
And be comfortable delegating to other people and trusting the other people that you've hired.
Yes. But so much of that is clarity of thought. If I come in, like Mike and I would never come in blue skying it. I was on shows where it's like, I don't know. What do you think they do? And it's hours of like, go to the circus. Go, like you're just like, I don't know, buy a hat. I don't know. What is it? I never come in like that. Mike and I come in going, this is what we want to do an episode about colorism. I tell a story about, I talked to my brother. He called me up. He was at the beach in San Diego and somebody told him to go back to Mexico. And he was like stunned. And then he was like, well, first of all, I'm not Mexican, but like, don't say that to anybody, you know? And I was like, what, did you freak out? When he's like, no, I was so shocked. I was like, what year is it? What's happening? And so I was like, so that just happened to my brother because he's darker. I'm very fair skinned. He's very dark skinned. There's a thing called colorism in the Latino community. And then our Black writers like, that also exists in the Black community. We're, oh my God, let's talk about colorism. So let's do an episode where something happens to Alex. As a result of that, the family talks about colorism. And then we find a way to, Elena realizes that she's white passing. And what does that mean? Let's see if we can actually craft something where that's the kickoff to this episode. And then Mike and I will go do something, but we have a very clear directive of here's what we want to do and here's where we want to go. So that when we come back, it's like, okay, where are you guys at? And they can say, well, we were thinking maybe a way in was like, he's at a game and or maybe he gets in a fight at school. And, oh, I like the fight at school thing. That's really good. That's how it goes. So clarity and communication.
It's beautiful. That's true in so many other businesses. And that's a female skill. That's so funny. Lovely. So you're speaking to, of course, the beauty of the whole sort of brain trust and the ability to brainstorm together and be comfortable.
Oh my God. No showrunner is doing it alone. You have so many people there to help you. And it really is about being so clear. I mean, I send Pinterest pages. There's just such clarity about what I like and what I don't like. And then that makes it easier for people to say, oh no, she doesn't love purple. I don't know, whatever, right? So that they can judge accordingly.
That's so beautiful. So I'm going to ask you the nuts and bolts question from a writing standpoint. In the beginning, what was your writing process and how do you manage it with all the other things you have to manage as a showrunner?
Well, I'm a really good multitasker. And for me, having more than one project at once is a real gift because sometimes you do feel stuck. I don't think it's writer's block because I don't believe that like there's a inspiration Cupid that you have to wait for to shoot the inspiration arrow into you. I think that is a falsehood that's been sold to artists. We have to go, hey, Cupid, come here. If you're doing this every day, you don't have time to wait for Cupid's arrow, right? To puncture you with inspiration. You've got to do it on the regular and you have to just make it a habit and a practice. Yeah. So for me, it's when I'm feeling like, I'm a little stuck here. I can put that to the side and then go to another one and jump in there or read or listen to music or do something to sort of get my brain back into a creative headspace. But yeah, it's just really about delegating. It's about delegating my time. It's about delegating to other trusted people so that all the trains can run on time and everyone can hopefully have a really good time doing it. I mean, it's a cool thing we get to do. It's a really cool thing we get to do. There's people that are behind a desk crunching numbers. We don't have to do that. We sit and get paid to think. What? Exactly. That's amazing. But in order to do that, you have to have a real respect for the art of what this is, for the format, for the process, for all of it, and really put in the time and the work because the cream rises to the top. That's it.
I agree. All right, I have one more question because we only have a couple minutes left and we're so thankful for your time. But I do want to ask this because you've referenced kids as well. And of course, we understand that in Hollywood, people have backups and help for their children and you have grandparents living across the street.
Yes, I do.
But of course, how do you do the managing of your real life and your work life?
Well, you need help. That's it. You need help in whatever form that is for you. I think that being a mother was very important to me and I was not going to stop my life to do it. I know many people who are like, oh, I'm just going to wait till I get that thing. And then I was not a believer in that. I was like, I know I want to have a kid when I'm 28 and another one when I'm 32. And that's what I did. Right. Like, there were certainly, it was hard. I mean, the real is it's hard. It's hard. It makes people nervous when you're a pregnant woman on a set, whether they like to admit it or not, there's like a vibe. When you're out of the game, I was out of the game for a year with my first child. I took a year off. And that was hard. It was hard. It was hard to get back in. It's true. You just have to acknowledge what the difficulties you're going to be and then how you're going to make a successful plan of attack to return. And I had all of that really well thought out. With my second child, I decided I went to a job interview when I was pregnant, and I let him know, I am, you can't tell, but I'm pregnant. So this baby will come out of me at some point and I will need some time. And he said, how much time do you need? And I said, 8 weeks. Great. So I took 8 weeks, and honestly, that was not enough. And I was kind of a disaster. I felt like I went back to that. They were so lovely to me. They set up a nursery for me so I could bring my baby. My mom, they really were lovely in terms of being generous in allowing me time to go down and breastfeed my baby and stuff. But I was not, for me personally, I needed more time than that. I needed 6 months to get myself back on track because it took such a toll on my body both times. So I think you just need to assess and do your best, and then set yourself up to have help. You have to have help. You cannot do this. You need a supportive spouse who works from home. You need a nanny. You need a parent. There is no way I could do the life that I have if I didn't have my mom and dad across the street. No way.
And having a employing situation where they are going to at least try to offer the things that you need.
Right. And look, the great news is being the boss is the best for being a parent because I dictate the hours, right? So we're done at 5 or 6 because I want to go home and have dinner with my kids and do homework with them and do stories and go to bed. But then at 9:15, my computer goes back on and I'm working until probably 1. And that's just the real. I'm doing cuts, making notes on scripts, writing an outline, whatever it is. So it's you got to love it. You got to love it and be willing to put in that amount of time when you're in production. I mean, right now, there's a show that I might have to do in Canada. And they're like, because of COVID, we don't think you can come back home. We think you just have to stay up there the whole time because it's a 2-week quarantine in between. So you can't go home for the weekend and then go back. It won't work. Well, I have to figure that out, right? How does that work? Because I am a hands-on parent. So what does that look like? How does that work? I also run a room where on day 1, I say, everybody here has somebody that's important to them. Or if it's your pet, if it's your best friend, if it's your dad, if it's your kids, you have somebody that you is super important to you. If they have something and you need to leave, you get to leave. So that's day 1. So we had Bridget Munoz-Leibowitz, unfortunately, her friend was very sick with cancer, and she would get to go and take her to chemo. And we had Audra Seeloff had a problem with her dog. It needed to go search. She got to go. So it's not just the parents were my kid was doing a presentation at 2:30. I'm going to go to the kid's presentation and I'll be right back. And that worked fine. It worked fine. Everyone got to live their lives. And that it hasn't always been the case. I was in one room where after somebody's rehearsal dinner, they had to come back to work. So that's not how I do.
That is the most beautiful place that we can stop because we want other people to do how you do. That is how the business should run. So I have to thank you for being with us today on behalf of the Athena Film Festival and the Stevens College MFA. Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I do Q&As all the time. I'm now on Clubhouse as well. I try to pop on there and give some advice. I have a Hollywood 101 series on YouTube that is free. It's a masterclass that's 11 episodes. So check all that stuff out and good luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much.